Welcome to Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Today we break down the biggest stories from this week's Economist, so you don't just follow the news, you actually understand it. Because the world right now feels fast, fractured, and frankly overwhelming. So let's slow it down. Let's connect the dots, and let's make sense of what's really going on. All right, let's dive in. This week's headlines span everything from war and unrest to diplomacy, financial shockwaves, and the accelerating AI arms race. Different stories, different continents, but one shared theme: pressure. Everywhere, all at once. We begin with two conflicts demanding the world's attention. First, Iran. Nationwide protests have erupted across major cities. Despite internet shutdowns and aggressive censorship, reports suggest thousands have been killed as the regime intensifies its crackdown. Urban centers are being transformed into battlefields, and the true scale of the violence may still be hidden. At the same time, the war in Ukraine has crossed a grim milestone. The United Nations reports 2,500 civilian deaths in 2025 alone. And here's the comparison that really puts things into perspective. This war has now lasted longer than the Soviet Union's entire fight against Nazi Germany. Back then, Soviet forces ended up in Berlin. Today, Russia's advances amount to a few dozen miles. Time without decisive progress, and a rising human cost. Even as wars rage, diplomacy hasn't stopped. After 25 years of negotiations, the European Union and Mercosur have finally signed a trade deal, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones, covering 700 million people. By 2040, tariffs will be eliminated on 90% of goods. This is a major realignment of global trade, pushed through despite fierce opposition from European farming lobbies. Elsewhere, Canada is cautiously repairing relations with China. Venezuela's political future remains uncertain. The United States is openly discussing its interest in conquering Greenland. And South Korea and Japan concluded high-level security talks with a K-pop drumming session. Diplomacy in 2026 is serious and increasingly surreal. Now to what may be the most consequential story of the week. The independence of the U.S. Federal Reserve was thrown into question. The Justice Department issued a subpoena to Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Officially, it concerned renovation costs. Unofficially, Powell called it what it looks like: a political attack on interest rate policy. The response was immediate and global. The heads of the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and other major institutions issued a rare joint statement backing Powell and defending central bank independence. Why does this matter? Because central banks are designed to keep economic decisions away from short-term politics. Once that firewall breaks, financial stability goes with it. President Trump has repeatedly criticized Powell for not cutting rates fast enough, and markets are now pricing in political risk. That fear showed up fast when a proposal to cap credit card interest rates at 10% triggered sell-offs in firms like American Express and Capital One. Markets aren't just reacting to policy. They're reacting to the possibility that rules no longer hold. Now to technology, and the race moving fastest of all. Apple has struck a landmark deal with Google, integrating Gemini AI into Siri. The impact was immediate. Alphabet's market value crossed $4 trillion for the first time, but the AI boom is showing cracks. Recruiters are overwhelmed by AI-generated job applications. Investors are warning of a potential AI bubble, and regulators are stepping in. After Elon Musk's chatbot Grok was used to generate non-consensual deepfake images, the backlash was swift. A new bill introduced in the US Senate, the UK threatening to ban X, and Musk himself forced to promise reforms. Innovation is accelerating, but so is resistance. A rapid scan of other major developments. In Hungary, Viktor Orban faces his toughest election in over a decade. In Britain, the Conservative Party is in disarray after a senior figure was fired amid defection rumors. In Uganda, the internet was shut down ahead of an election expected to keep an 81-year-old president in power for a fifth decade. And in South Korea, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty for a former president impeached just last year. When you step back, the pattern becomes clear. A chatbot controversy in Silicon Valley triggers legal threats in London. A political move in Washington sends shockwaves through Frankfurt and Tokyo. Wars drag on. Institutions strain. Technology races ahead of governance. Politics, economics, and technology are no longer separate worlds. They're colliding. And that collision, that's the defining story of our time. As pressure builds across every system at once, the real question isn't whether something breaks, but how long before it does. Happy new thinking!